Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. Let's talk about math and physics. So, if you've been following some of my stuff, physics does come up quite often, but it does not have a dedicated video, which is kind of crazy. So I'm gonna remedy that now. So when it comes to physics, it is a huge field, right? Because we're dealing with the universe. We're dealing with matter, right? We're dealing with energy. We're dealing with space. We're dealing with time. We're dealing with light, sound, just so many different things. And we're dealing with the properties of all those things. We're dealing with the behavior of all those things. We're dealing with um, the interaction between all those things, a la chemistry, or life, a la biology. You can't really get around physics without talking about chemistry and biology and vice versa. And at the end of the day, you can't talk about any of those things without talking about math. And I want to talk about it all today. And just to be clear, right, I'm going to talk about a lot of things in this video, but the universe is a big place. I'm not going to be able to talk about anything, sorry, everything. None of us would be able to, right? Um, but that's the start. So let's get into it proper. So when I think about physics, it's just a crazy thing to me because, right, we live in a universe full of shapes and full of motion. And on those two things alone, we're dealing with math, right? You can't really get around it. And the cool thing that I think about with physics is like whether we're talking about it is an academic subject or not, whether we're putting a name to it or not, the universe is doing what it's doing. We're doing what we're doing. And the idea with physics is like, hey, what if, or physics is an academic subject, it's like, what if we're actually looking at the universe and trying to say things about it? And I think that's the cool part. And I wish that was more accessible to people because that's the whole point of physics is an academic subject to say things about the universe. And dear God, you can say a lot, which makes sense. With that in mind, I think it's pretty cool because one of the biggest things in physics is the idea of motion. Um, and I think that's cool because that's an inherently mathematical concept to me. And one of the big things is speed, right? And I think that's pretty cool because it's like we're dealing with this idea that we're dealing with distance, we're dealing with time, and how they connect to each other. So it's like because basically speed, as cool as it is, it boils down to thing A can move to place B in C amount of time, or said a less clunky way, we're dealing with how far we can move. We're dealing with one position, we're moving to another position, and we're seeing how fast we can get to that point. And you know, there's a better way to say it, but my whole point is motion is prevalent. We're dealing with speed, we're dealing with distance, we're dealing with time, and all these things are mathematical. And just from that idea of motion, that we can change positions, that we can do that in a certain amount of time, right? And that we can measure that dynamic between those two, right? In addition to all that, that leads to so many things. Because, you think about light, you think about sound, we're dealing with speed there, right? We're dealing with sound, we're dealing with vibrations, and all of that's math, right? Um, and then just everyday life, right? Because not only are we dealing with physics if we're walking around, but there's a lot of physics going on in our body, right? Like how neurons are firing, how blood is flowing, and when we're moving, it's like, well, not only is there physics involved in making that work, but just so many things involving physics behind the scene. And again, it's like when we're doing something like just simply moving, like I'm doing right now, I'm moving my hands, I'm moving them weirdly, but I'm moving them. And there's physics in that, like, the positions, the angle, the speeds, all that, where I'm at with my hands in any given spot. But that is biology, that is chemistry. And I think that's fascinating. And then it's just like, you're dealing with space and just time as a whole and how that all goes, right? Because like with physics, I think one of the coolest parts is that you are dealing with just this wide range of subjects, this wide range of things to study, whether we're talking about the subatomic or we're talking about the cosmic, physics is there at every step, and math is there with it. Because with math, right, we're dealing with how the universe functions, how it flows, what it's composed of, and all these other different things. And with physics, I think what's cool about that is an academic subject is one of the ones where it is super clear that it's dealing with math. And over time, you see that more with other subjects, but the math has always been there. It's just like, well, how do we put a name to it? And academic math and academic physics, they go hand in hand in so many different ways, right? Because it's just like if people aren't trying to figure out things about the universe, we don't get math as an academic subject. And with physics in particular, say something like calculus, right? Like we're doing the calc whether we write it down or not, right? Just that idea of dealing with motion, dealing with the idea of how things change over time, right? um, we're dealing with calc all the time, but it's an academic subject, right? We can put a name to things more, right? We can say like, hey, maybe I'm dealing with these different elements, physics of the universe, and I can maybe define things in that traditional mathematical sense. So I'm able to make calculations, I'm able to make predictions, I'm able to dissect things more, and I think that's all cool. Because again, like with math, it's this kind of thing it's everywhere. It's in everything. We're doing the math whether we write it down or not. Same with physics, chemistry, biology, all that, right? Like we're not just dealing with the study of the things, but things themselves. Um, and I think that's cool because, right, all of the things that we're talking about when we're talking about those subjects were things that already existed. We're just figuring out more about them. And the physics, I think it's a really cool thing because it's just like whether we're talking about our bodies, computers, the universe as a whole, physics is there. Because, like I was saying, right, if we're talking about matter, we're talking about its properties, its behavior, we're talking about energy, space, time, light, sound, we're dealing with physics. Same with electricity. Just all physics all the time. And I think that's cool. And again, I wish that were more acceptable. Oh, sorry. Accessible. As far as school goes. As far as academic subjects go. Because right, we're doing the physics regardless. We're doing the math regardless. But I want to see more people empowered by that. And that being said, I could talk all day about this stuff. But I do want to hear from you about this. Because like is there something that you think of when you think of physics that draws you into thinking about math? Because again, it's all connected. But it's like, is there something that it's like, okay, that's physics, but that's also math? And or like, oh, that's physics, that's biology, that's chemistry, that's math, or all of the above. I'd be curious to hear from you. Either way, physics is awesome, math is awesome. Just, yeah.